Want to welcome you all to our District 6 Town Hall meeting. So I don't know if everyone's familiar with the district. It's a great district, obviously, by far the best constituents, that's for sure. And the representation is top notch as well. Forgive that shameless self-promotion. But I often describe our district as being kind of like a T turned on its side. And so if you imagine the western border of Pasadena, we have pretty much the entire western border with Glendale and Eagle Rock. And then at the Arroyo Wash up in Linda Vista, so we have all of Linda Vista, the Arroyo Wash comes down, and then it opens up, and we have most of Old Pasadena. We have Huntington Hospital, our only hospital in Pasadena now. We have the Convention Center and the Civic Auditorium. We have, the multifamily housing seems to be concentrated there in that part. Then if you come down and it sort of cuts back to Marengo and then comes down to the 110, where the 110 terminus is at Arroyo Parkway. So the way we see it, you could do 6, 8, 10, 2, but the 4 kind of works because you've got Linda Vista and Annandale. You've got the San Rafael Hills and South San Rafael, sort of west rather of the Arroyo and south of the freeway. Then you've got what we call South Orange Grove, which includes the neighborhoods on the eastern side of the Arroyo and South Orange Grove and sort of the freeway project, and then Central City, we call it, with the multifamily and Old Pasadena and the like. So works well. We're going to try to get those other 5 done this year. We're a little behind already. Obviously, it's March, and this is our first one, but we're grateful you're here, and we have some really good issues to discuss. We usually start with me summarizing what we've been up to at City Hall. And I'm going to have to come up with a new expression because I usually say no rest for the weary or the wicked, as the case may be. And it has indeed been a very busy time at City Hall. If any of you were able to listen to the mayor's State of the City, you heard, for example, about the numbers of different city managers we've had in the past couple of years, the new police chief that we had. We have a number of new department heads as well. And of course, the city council only directly supervises 3 direct reports. We have what's called a strong city manager form of government. So city manager is our primary direct report. And he, in this case it is a he now, Miguel Marquez, runs most of the operations of the city. The department heads and the different departments of the city report to him. And the staff handles operations. We don't handle operations in any way, shape, or form, nor would anyone likely want us to, the council members. And then our other 2 direct reports, the city clerk, who has a much smaller staff, but a very important function in terms of elections, meetings, the many commissions that we have in Pasadena. And then the city attorney providing legal advice in both a civil and a criminal section, where we investigate and prosecute our own misdemeanor cases by our city attorney's office as the city prosecutor, and then the civil side, the city attorney representing us in civil litigation. One of the things I do is I read every claim that comes in against the city every week, and we probably get 15 to 20 on average a week. And the claims are a precursor to the actual filing of a lawsuit. So if you ever have a beef with the city, and I'm not encouraging you to go litigation, sort of the nuclear option right out of the gate, but if it gets to that point where you believe you have a claim, usually you have to file a Government Claims Act claim administratively with the city. Then if the city does anything other than grant the claim or resolve it, you then have a very short timetable. I think it's 6 months to then bring your lawsuit. So I try to head off as many of those as I can. So as I said, I read every single claim. Any claims in our district, I try to flag and communicate with the city attorney about it. So if one of our constituents has that kind of dispute with the city, I definitely want to know about that, and I want to know what our position is. Obviously, we have to be careful. Probably anybody have an idea what like the most popular, the most by volume, the most prevalent claim would be? And our city staff can't raise their hand because they would know. Probably city tree branches falling on a car and damaging the car. And it's really striking how we get a couple a week, 2, 3 a week of those on average. And of course, the residents, to them, it's an open and shut case, right? It's your tree, fell on my car. And it's amazing how these branches can really damage a car. You know, you can see sometimes several $1,000s of damage from one branch. Unfortunately, the law is that unless the city was on prior notice that there was a problem with that tree, thank you, then the city is not liable for that, which seems like a harsh result, but that is the law. So in any event, whatever the claim is, we review and all of that. So didn't really mean to launch into a long civics lesson, but some of this I will tie up with you in a bit, because some of the issues that we're going to talk about tonight really go right to the heart of the relationship between the city council and the city manager, where the boundaries are, what our role is, and what his role and that of the city attorney and the city clerk are. In terms of the council, you know, it's a really interesting time, right? Sort of politically with a small p for purposes of this meeting. You know, we've got 8 city council members. We have 4 freshman city council members. So out of the 8, 4 of them are in their first term. 2 of them have only done 2 years, and the other 2 are brand spanking new. They've got 2 months on the council. So, you know, that's a process, a challenge, and also a great opportunity to hear what newcomers to the city council have to offer, and fresh perspective, ideas, and what have you. Then another cut that you can do is, if I'm correct, by my count, 6 of the 8 are up for election next year. So we have the prospect maybe of having, I mean, this is unlikely, right, that there'd be that kind of turnover, especially in Pasadena. Incumbents tend to do well when they do decide to run again. But, you know, you have the theoretical possibility of 6 new council members stepping in out of the 8, which would really be remarkable. And again, all of this against the backdrop of a brand new city manager who, by my lights, has been outstanding so far. I'm very pleased with his work, not without disagreements or hiccups sometimes. You know, that happens. But unquestionable integrity, work ethic, dedication, and, you know, anybody, you know, wanting to do well in an important position like that would be well advised to start with those 3 things, you know, dedication, work ethic, and integrity. So we'll talk about some of those things, and let me just touch on a couple of issues before we get to our speakers, because I am really excited about speakers we have tonight. And as always, this is your meeting. We want to make sure we take your questions. Anything you want to talk about, happy to talk about with you. So first thing, I'd really be derelict if I didn't say this is my first town hall meeting ever, and I've been doing this a while, as most of you know, without Takako Suzuki, our longtime field representative. And can we give her a round of applause? Thank you. So Taka stepped away and retired after 23 years as a field rep for the city. And, you know, it's a big loss. I really do miss her. She's kind of like Al Pacino in one of those Godfather movies, though. They keep pulling her back in. You know, she's now our arts commissioner. And we get constituent feedback from Taka, which is, you know, normally the response to that is Taka, deal with the, you know, but it's Taka that's, you know, inquiring. And, you know, I'm a big fan of a jiu-jitsu instructor named Henner Gracie. I don't know if anybody knows Henner Gracie or not, but Max, yeah, he's awesome. He actually trains our police officers on use of force. And a lot of it is contrary to the things that officers learn in the academy and on their job, which is keep distance between you and the potential, violator, perpetrator, potential detainee or arrestee. Keep distance, use the tools that the law gives you with escalating force, physical force, pepper spray, baton, taser, even lethal force if it requires it. It's a big thing to get them over the idea that for jiu-jitsu, you need to close that gap. You need to actually physically engage with the individual, again, only in an appropriate case. But what we're finding is it can really reduce the use of more lethal or serious force. Anyway, Henry Gracie says, one of the things that he says is, never become so obsessed with what you've lost that you lose focus on what is now newly available to you. Great lesson, not just for jiu-jitsu. In jiu-jitsu, what it means is if your opponent takes away a particular move that you thought you might be able to make, don't be so obsessed with that, because there's probably a new opportunity for something else. And that's certainly the case with our field rep. Justin Chapman is our new District 6 field rep, and he's doing a fabulous job. So. Thank you. Justin has a master's in public diplomacy. That's coming in real handy in this job. He's written a book or two. He's, published. He's an on-air journalist. I mean, literally, when I was interviewing, I was like, why don't you sit over here and I'll sit there, and he's highly, highly qualified, and I'm excited to be working with Justin. His phone number is the same as it's been for our district office, 744-4739, 626-744-4739. Love to hear from you if you have an issue. And his email is jchapman@cityofpasadena.net. jchapman@cityofpasadena.net. Most of our city emails are first initial, last name. There are some exceptions for common names, but if you're ever sort of in doubt, that's usually a good place to start. So jchapman@cityofpasadena.net. I want to mention a couple of the biggies that we've been working on that I'm sure you've heard about. We now own about 50 acres of what formerly was the 710 route. The trench, the ditch, the state's former property there. Not the houses. Importantly, there's a lot of confusion about this. The houses are not ours yet, but we do own the trench. We own that 50 acres. So this is a real historic opportunity. And for me, I can't speak for my colleagues, and usually there are 9 opinions among the 8 of us on every issue, but for me, it's like a 3-legged stool. Like, this is historic, so important, and an opportunity that we can't blow. And it'd be easy to drop the ball on this too. So we really have to go about our business in the right way. And for me, it's kind of a 3-legged stool. One is strong community involvement, including community outreach and input. And we just appointed a working group, what we're calling the working group. It's a little awkward sort of semantically, but so far, it's the 710 working group, and each council member had 1 appointment, 2 from the mayor, so that was 9. Then there was some leakage around the number of additional at-large appointees, and we landed on 7. So there are now 16 members of this body, and 2 of them are descendants per the resolution that we adopted to form the group. 2 of them are descendants of persons who were displaced, who lost property rights when the 710 was initially rolled out, 60 or 70 years ago. And, as usual, District 6 just rises to the top. The West Pasadena has, and there are some reasons for that, obviously. We tend to be highly educated. We're fortunate, most of us, in terms of our quality of life, and economically, But still, it's just striking to me. By my count, we have 5 of the 16 are from this one district out of 8, out of 7, excuse me, in the city. And I just want to mention my appointee is Ali Barar, someone I've worked closely with, an architect, prominent architect who's served on a variety of commissions for me over the years. My good friend Mick Hansen was appointed as an at-large appointee. Mick's here tonight. Thank you. Yes, thank you. Cynthia Kurtz, our former city manager, who's also a constituent, is an appointee. Wayne Brandt, I believe, is an appointee, an at-large appointee, or a mayoral appointee from our district, and Randy Schulman, I believe, although I'm not positive about Randy. So in any event, 4 or 5, and we've been a little slow getting that together, so I'm hopeful now we'll get the working group up and running and meeting and getting after it. Because, you know, it'll be the 1-year anniversary in June when the state, and I testified there twice last year, the final time in June when they decided to relinquish is the term they use, relinquish the property, and then it was formally conveyed as a matter of record in August. So, you know, we're coming up on a 1-year anniversary. Lots of reasons why, but we haven't really moved the ball much. Although we have had some good news for funding. We've gotten a couple of grants that are going to help us plan and prepare and all. But so that's one leg of the stool. The other two, pretty straightforward, strong staff ownership of this project. The way I see it, we can't have, you know, 9 different department heads spending an hour a week on this. We need to have somebody who owns this and that we all know owns it. So the city manager obviously is at least titularly and presumptively that person, but we did give the city manager funding and approval to have 3 assistant city managers instead of 2, as has always been the case, or at least in recent times. And he's now filled those positions. David Reyes, longtime head of planning and permitting, is now an assistant city manager, and Brenda Harvey Williams, the head of parks, recreation and parks and human services, is now an assistant city manager as well. David and Brenda starting on Monday. So my expectation and wish is that one of them will be vested with ownership of this, and I think it probably would be David because of his planning background. So community through the working group, staff through an assistant city manager and a city manager, as well as many, many more staff people will work on this. And then third, strong consultants. We're really going to need excellent consultancy relationships for CEQA, for project finance, for historic respect and repatriation of what was there before to the limit of our ability. So those are the 3 things, and we're off now and running, so to speak, with the working group. But you know, the other 2 still sort of are coming together, and we'll keep you posted about that. I wanted to mention that we took a bold step on environmentalism at the council, and this one was a little of it, bit of a head scratcher, but ultimately we think it landed in the right place, and that is we determined and adopted unanimously a resolution that mandates that Pasadena will be carbon-free in terms of our energy by 2030. Now that's aggressive. It's ahead of the state's benchmarks, time-wise and all. And there was a lot of debate, and a couple of the members were clearly opposed to this, although they went along with it at the end. And even after that, there's been some to and froing about it. But I think clearly a supermajority of the council believes in this. And it's a heavy lift, to go carbon-free. Not carbon neutral. Carbon neutral is you still use carbon, but you just buy credits or have offsets or whatever. Carbon-free means carbon-free. All the power that we would sell to you would be generated from renewables, not from carbon. So we'll see how that unfolds. There's been, there was a survey that was sent out by the city staff that was not well advised at all. It was pulled back. The city manager is now conducting an investigation into how a survey could go out that said, basically what it said, the city council decided this, do you agree? And don't you think it'd be better if we did this other thing? And going back to my opening remarks about sort of the charter and what the appropriate role is. Just as I can't go out and pick up your trash or climb up a power line, nor can the staff set policy once the council has spoken clearly and unambiguously. They should weigh in. They should continue to have their own opinions and continue to tell us if they think we made a mistake. Look forward to having that open public debate at a city council meeting. But to try to undermine the council, in my mind, was a serious lapse of judgment at a minimum. So we're committed to that. I chair the Legislative Policy Committee. The committee confirmed the other night that that's our mandate to our state and local, state and federal rather, legislative advocates, that we are going carbon-free by 2030. You may recall a rent control initiative was passed last year. We have not yet appointed the rent control board, which was created by the ballot initiative that was submitted and passed by a pretty healthy margin, to the surprise of many. There's litigation pending from the Apartment Owners Association about the measure, and we're trying to balance our obligation to implement the will of the voters with the legal constraints that the litigation is offering. And we should be on track to appoint that board by mid to late April, which I believe is the deadline. I know you didn't come here just to hear me tonight, so let me just move quickly through the other points. Gas leaf blowers, kind of back to the environment there, in terms of not just carbon, but also noise. Beginning April 28, gas-powered leaf blowers will be banned in Pasadena. And, we're going to be, it is the right decision, absolutely. We're excited about it. It'll reduce ambient noise. It'll be better for the environment, ultimately, especially if we stick to the carbon-free electricity. We're going to have, a lenient, constructive rollout. We're not looking to bust your landscaper because he or she didn't know, but they should know about it. And I'm told that CaliforniaCore.org is offering point of sale discounts of up to $400 per electric powered leaf blower for all small businesses and sole proprietor landscapers. So let your landscaper know if they're complaining to you about the cost. Make sure that they know about this rebate program. We let a contract for the Central Library retrofit. We're just steps away from the Nithsdale, library branch down the street. And, libraries are extremely important to the community. Central Library was basically red tagged a few years back because of earthquake safety concerns. And this is one of those where you really realize how time has changed. We approved a $6.1 million contract. And of course, people said, for the retrofit? No, that's for the initial studies and design and environmental work on the retrofit. And it could be that that'll be a $100 million project when all is said and done, but we have to do it. And we're trying to move swiftly through the next 2 or 3 years to begin construction in 2025 if we can. So I think those are the big updates I had. Again, I welcome your comments. And let me turn to our speakers for tonight, and in particular, as you saw from the agenda and the postcard, we want to talk about the, well, one is a real thorn in our side. Yarma, please. Thank you so much. And I think we have our joint meeting coming up very shortly. If I'm, may even be. Yes, I'm so, the comment from Yarma Velasquez, our school board member, for our congratulations to that accomplishment, is about certain county monies that are available for projects to school districts for transportation, and the idea that we should be coordinating carefully with the city around transportation infrastructure. Great. Okay, that's very important. And I just mentioned that we have a joint meeting I think we have 2 a year with the district, the board, and the city council, and I think one is coming up very soon. So I'll make sure that that's on our agenda. You might do the same on the board side of the house for sure. So one thing is that was really irksome to many of us was on the 134 freeway, for those of you who use that from time to time, that the Caltrans came in and put these big white barricades and essentially reduced 2 lanes to 1 on the eastbound side, the on-ramp from Linda Vista, San Rafael, and then coming westbound, the off-ramp, it's an on-ramp too, that begins at Colorado Boulevard, curls around. They did the same thing with these big barricades. And it relates to apparently structural safety and concerns. And I think, Laura, are you going to speak to that one, or is it Tony? Okay. Or we have Caltrans here, I think, to speak about that, right? That's Sam and Allison. I'm sorry. Come on up and welcome. Caltrans, also known as our best friends since the 710 freeway decision. So, yeah.
So we just wanted to kind of start by, telling you a little bit about what we're working on at the Arroyo Seco Bridge there on 134. And then we wanted to, tell you about an upcoming meeting we have on Sunday, and, maybe have time to answer a few questions from you guys. So let's just start by Sam. He is the resident engineer on the project, and he's going to tell you a little bit about what we're doing.
Thanks, Allison. Good evening. So we're removing and replacing, essentially upgrading the barrier system at the edge of the bridge deck that goes over the Arroyo Seco. So that'd be Route 134, and it kind of relates a little bit to the Orange Grove off-ramp as well, because that also is another structure that goes over the Arroyo Seco Drive. You guys have noticed the barricades that were there. We had a conference. I don't know what I would call that, but in January we had a virtual meeting. We had a virtual meeting, and we collected some questions at that time, and we had promised a follow-up meeting, and that follow-up meeting is what we're doing on Sunday afternoon at Desiderio. Is it Desiderio Park, I believe, which is just across the street from the job site. So, it's a pretty straightforward project. We've had those barricades in place because we had to do some measurements of the amount of clearance that we have over there on the shoulder. We did receive some concerns from you all, or maybe some others, some of your neighbors, that maybe the signage could be improved. And we did make some adjustments to the merge notifications and other construction area signs that we believe has improved the traffic operation at that location. Of course, we're always here to listen. We're always here to understand and make any adjustments that we can accommodate. So yeah, I mean, actually what I'd like to do is open up for any kind of questions. Some of them may not be able to be answered tonight. Maybe they would be more appropriate to answer on Sunday because we have very limited time. So please.
Yeah.
I'll sort of curate the questions, and let me start if I could. I mean, the one thing that can be, again, irksome to people is 2 different levels of government, so we all remember the 3-layered cake from civics class, federal, state, local. Here you have a state agency that has important control and responsibilities for these freeways. But those barricades went up just days before January 2nd this year, where we have a little event where 1 million people come to our city, and the traffic flow is very important, and the aesthetic is very important too. I personally was really disappointed, especially how good our relationship is, that sort of tone deaf, like, what about the Rose Parade and the Rose Bowl game? Can't we do it like in 2 weeks instead of right before? So was that considered, or did anyone give that any thought? Sorry to put you on the spot, but I mean.
No, so I'm actually happy to.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Please,
no, I fully understand. So actually, we have to prosecute this work in a expeditious manner. Actually, the work was scheduled to start earlier, and the truth is we could not put it off any longer. Councilman, I'm sure you understand that funds that are allocated must be encumbered and they must be expended. We cannot just sit by only for one event. I understand it's very important, and I actually look forward to earning more of your trust over time. But I'm sure you understand the project had to continue.
Well, we've got lots of uses for funds if you ever have that problem, you know, but, and I think the other sort of part of that is even today, I don't feel there's sufficient signage, especially on the eastbound. Like you go to get on that freeway.
Tell me where,
Yeah. So you go to get on the freeway, there's an off ramp with a meter, you know, if the traffic is heavier, which is often all the time. And then the way it was before, you progress into your own lane. So that on-ramp still becomes one lane. And then you can decide to exit at Colorado, continue on to take the, 710 transition south, or signal over to either go north on the 210 or east on the 2. There's no signage now about that. So what the habits that we've formed over decades is now all of a sudden you're pushed together. Thankfully, I haven't seen a lot of accidents there, but I've seen a lot of near misses because people don't understand that. So maybe some signage, lanes merge or one lane ahead, something just giving us a reminder as we do it, because old habits die hard. Yeah. So give it some thought. And again, we defer to you in this area, and please don't, we're grateful for the work and for the upgrade and the safety and all of that. But we'll try to do a better job communicating with you about this. And
actually, perhaps it would be very useful. I mean, given the fact that you guys use this all the time and you have your patterns, and councilmen, you sound like you really understand those ingrained patterns, we'd be happy to receive those, that understanding, and maybe incorporate that into what we do. We do our very best, but of course, we can really benefit from your intimate knowledge of those habits.
Terrific. Thank you. So questions? Yeah, David. Wait, hold on. No, let me go to David first, and then I'll come up to you. Apologize. David. And it is important to understand, in some senses, we're an island here in West Pasadena because of the arroyo. And so I know myself, for example, I jump on that very on-ramp that we're talking about to go to City Hall, to go to Old Pasadena, jump on and off. I think a lot of us do. So there may be data out there that would be helpful to you that we can provide, just because we've been doing it forever. So Bruce, please. So let me repeat for everyone. What's the date of completion projected to be, and can we improve the look of the San Rafael?
Could you be a little bit more specific about improve the look?
I will say we've had good success with Caltrans on maintenance issues like that. The fork in the road, everyone recall that, down at St. John and Pasadena Avenue. When we've asked, we've received good responsiveness from Caltrans about maintenance issues. So, okay, we're gonna.
Number one, I heard your concerns loud and clear in January regarding the safety of that area. One, the response that I provided that evening was that the traffic operation in that location met the Caltrans standards. Of course, the Caltrans standards may not understand some of the nuance that we're understanding here this evening. Here this evening is the first time that I'm understanding some of that. For example, Councilman Madison just pointed out to me that actually the Arroyo Seco wash there actually does create a little bit of an island, and actually it creates the freeway as somewhat of a local access road. That is actually a very pertinent piece of information that I learned this evening. So that's for one. Two, the chain link fence on top of that barrier is actually not really like a chain link fence. It's more of an architectural fence. Chain link fence implies a sort of diamond pattern, whereas this is a little bit more of an architectural detail with a more vertical type rectangular fence pattern that's meant to be more aesthetically pleasing. And as far as it matching the adjacent bridges, actually, I remember very clearly that you did raise the point that, hey, has this been coordinated with other fences or other projects in the area. And I did mention to you that we were going to get back to you on the specific details. That's specifically what we're going to be discussing on Sunday afternoon. And so, and by the way, I will be staying until the end, and I would like to hear from you personally, because I sense that you take a very strong sense of interest and concern in this project, and I want to make sure that at a very minimum, you have a clear understanding of what our intention is. The flyers we did make some, and again, forgive me, I will find out more about you specifically to make sure that you're not left out of these discussions. We did make an effort to hand out flyers to notify the same residents that we had notified previously about that event. We did hand out flyers mentioning that we would be here this evening, and that also we would be holding the event on Sunday as a follow-up to our January discussion. I'd also like to add that after we understood your concerns regarding the safety, after we asserted that that operation met the Caltrans standard, we did continue to monitor that location, and that's when we decided to make a few adjustments to the construction area signs, moving them a little bit forward. For example, to the gentleman in the checkered shirts point, as far as making that notification a little bit earlier than the San Rafael operation would allow drivers to understand they have to move over to the left. You have to understand that we also have a limitation. When you put too many signs on the freeway, sometimes that causes other issues. So we do our very, very best, and I want to understand your concerns more. Yeah.
Okay, let's do one more question, and then we need to move on to our other agenda. I will, hold on one second.
You can expect that by the summer of 24, will be accepted by that time.
No, we said it was early 2024.
It is early 2024,
Yeah,
but I'm saying that if I'm standing here and I'm talking to you and I'm seeing that we're going to get an atmospheric river this evening, I'm realizing that we're dealing in a kind of changing climate. So.
Okay, let's do two more questions because I see, but then we do want to move on to the rest of the agenda. Yes. Question is, at the community meeting, I guess, could there be some sort of tabletop model or I imagine other way for people to really visualize what's being discussed?
I'm planning on bringing packets for everybody, with the good views and with photos.
Oh, I'm sorry. Gosh. Yeah, I'm planning on bringing packets for everybody with, FAQs and renderings and photos. And, I'll include a map in those if perhaps each person could, and we'll have like pens and pencils and we can write it out if that's kind of what you're looking at. I don't have like a giant, like big size model of the actual site, unfortunately. But, I can certainly print out maps for every person.
And to understand more clearly, the use of this model for you would be mostly focused on safety. Am I understanding? Safety of the temporary conditions, or are you talking about the final conditions? Well, I'd like to understand more about the concern, though. It sounds like your concern is about nighttime work. Did I understand that? Nighttime work, daytime work, understood. But I want to make sure I understand very, very clearly. It sounds like I made a very big trespass and that perhaps in my explanation, I have dismissed a question. You mentioned that perhaps So
Sure, he's talking about the safety of the workers and of the
But she also
the
mentioned
drivers.
that I ignored. She mentioned that
Well,
I may
that
have...
was a separate point that she was making. The
Understood,
question now
understood.
is about
Okay.
the safety during construction. Okay, I want to try to move with alacrity to our other two big projects that we wanted to talk about tonight. And of course, the first will be presented by Laura Rubio-Cornejo. This is sort of a conglomeration of different transportation-related projects in this part of our district, this part of the city. While Laura's coming up, I'll just summarize her background. She's been doing transportation projects for over 17 years. She came to us from Metro, which is a very important relationship that we have, LA Metro, in terms of funding and projects and the like. And Laura, welcome. Come on up and thank you.
Well, I want to thank the councilman for inviting me to be here this evening, and Justin as well for helping coordinate. As the councilman mentioned, I've been with the city for almost 4 years, about 3.5 years. I spent 10 years at Metro prior to that, and I was really looking forward to working, returning to municipal government and working on a number of projects and actually seeing them implemented in my lifetime. The transportation department is multimodal and multidisciplinary. I am responsible for overseeing the city's garage, our 7 garages that we own, our surface lots, our on-street parking. I am also responsible for overseeing the city's Pasadena transit and dial-a-ride system, so parking, transit, and then also our mobility unit, which includes everything from traffic operations, engineering, planning, complete streets, active transportation. And so there's a lot going on. And the good thing is that there's always a transportation issue, a transportation technology to be implemented. And there's always a way to improve the way we move about the city. So I'm very happy to be here this evening. What I want to focus on are really 3 major projects within this council district. The first is the California Boulevard, and those improvements that we've been working on, focusing on that section between St. John and Pasadena Avenue. And then some really great news that we received recently and funding. And I'll focus a little bit more on the Pasadena Avenue and St. John corridor and planned improvements and what those steps will look like. And then a project that I'm sure many of you have long been waiting for, Avenue 64 and those traffic safety improvements. So first, let me start with the California Boulevard, St. John Avenue to Pasadena Avenue. And, you know, my team is filled with engineers. No offense to the engineers in the room, especially my colleague. But we're not always very creative in coming up with project titles, but you know exactly what it is. So this project includes a couple of different improvements to enhance safety and mobility near California, on California Boulevard between St. John and Pasadena Avenue. It includes adding a dual southbound left turns as from St. John onto California Boulevard. We had heard that a lot of people kind of use that middle lane anyways to make a left, so we want to make it safe and accommodate that. On the north side of California Boulevard, there is an existing sidewalk, but it's not ADA compliant. There are utility poles in the middle. It's a rather narrow sidewalk. We will be widening that sidewalk and making sure it is ADA compliant. So for Sequoia School, that is literally adjacent to that sidewalk, that'll create a safer walking path for students and parents and guardians who are walking their children to school, and for residents as well. We will be adding a marked crosswalk where you see the yellow on the west side of Pasadena Avenue in California. You know, we want to make sure that we're being responsive to how people are actually using the streets and recognizing that there's a school on that side. I'm sure there's a lot of people who would love to cross there and maybe do, but we want to make it safe. And then in the other direction, westbound on California Avenue, you know, there will be dual right turn lanes, and then there'll be turn arrows to allow for that safe right turn and pedestrian leading interval for pedestrians who are crossing. We anticipate construction on this project starting in spring of 2024. We've been working really closely with some of the stakeholders. We actually met with Sequoia School this afternoon to go over the plans and get any additional input from them. And then the design, as it says here, the design will be completed by this summer, but we anticipate beginning construction in spring of next year. And recently, Metro Board voted to reallocate about $235 million, but with 181.4 designated for specific projects. You might recall several years back, the city received funding for a grade separation at California, where we would be separating basically vehicular and pedestrian traffic from the train. We did some feasibility studies, and we were awarded $235 million. We found that there were a couple of constraints that had not been in place when we first requested that funding. Land uses had changed. We looked at what the construction impacts would be. Streets would need to be closed down for a significant amount of time, creating a real impact in the immediate neighborhood, and maybe even kind of across the city, how people would travel. We received direction from, and then also importantly, the initial estimates were coming in near $600 million. So clearly outside our budget. And so council directed staff to look at other alternatives that they could consider to be presented to Metro for reallocating the funding. We definitely did not want to lose $235 million of funding for potential transportation improvements. Around the time that we were doing this study to identify other potential projects, we were also undertaking the relinquishment process with Caltrans and the CTC. And the stars aligned such that CTC made their final determination of relinquishing the corridor to the city around the same time that we had to submit this list to Metro. Because the timing worked out, we were able to present Metro with a couple of projects that we otherwise would not have been able to have them consider had the corridor not been relinquished to the city. And so I'm going to talk about two of the projects because those are the ones that are most imminent. As you see here, funding was allocated for 9 projects, multimodal projects. Some of them improve vehicular circulation. Some of them are intended to improve pedestrian and bicycle access. Others will help us enhance our transit services. So it really is a multimodal list at 181 million. The 49.1 is reserved for the city to return to Metro at a later time for other projects, or if project costs are escalating as we've been seeing, project costs coming in really high, we're able to go back to Metro and have them allocate some additional funding so we can make sure we get these projects implemented. So the first project I want to talk about is the corridor along Pasadena Avenue and St. John. This is about a 1.8-mile corridor between Columbia on the south and Walnut on the north. We identified some very preliminary concepts over the summer of 2022 as we were looking at how this corridor could begin to be transformed. Now, I want to be very clear that this is a separate effort from the larger planning and visioning process that the councilman just talked about earlier. What we didn't want to do was wait 5 years, 10 years. We didn't even want to wait a handful of years before we started changing the way this corridor operates, the way it feels. Right now, I'm sure many of you have driven up and down these streets. It serves as an entryway to the freeway on and off ramps, and it serves almost as a quasi-freeway. We want to change that. We want to humanize the corridor and really make it feel more at a pedestrian scale where individuals will feel safe walking up and down those streets and start to reconnect some of these neighborhoods that have been bifurcated because of the planned freeway. And so that's really what a lot of these projects or the preliminary projects that were identified aim to do. We identified with public input the potential of building out a bikeway, a 2-way bikeway along the corridor, some curb extensions so that we're making the crossings for pedestrians safer and shorter, some mid-block crossings. We recognize that not everyone wants to walk to the corner to cross. And so again, going back to acknowledging the way people travel and the way people use our streets, we want to provide some mid-block crossings to make it safe, some landscaping and new sidewalks where there are existing sidewalks, and building out sidewalks where there are no sidewalks, and traffic signal upgrades. Important to note that a lot of the improvements that we will be looking at are really focused on the western side of St. John and Pasadena Avenue. And that is because, the eastern side. And that is because to the west is where you have the freeway on and on ramps. We want to wait till the city undertakes that larger planning process for the community to determine what that circulation to and from the freeway will look like. We don't want to predetermine what that access will be, but we also want to start changing and improving safety and circulation along this corridor. Let me go back. The next step, just so that you know, some of you might be wondering what our timing is, we're probably looking about a year or so out before we really start the planning process in earnest. We were just allocated this project funding a month ago. There's a process where we have to do, funding agreements, and then we'll work with the Public Works Department to issue an RFP to bring on a team that will help us with the design and outreach. And so at that point, we'll go back out to the community and gather additional input and refine some of the concepts that were developed last summer. And then I'm happy to share that Avenue 64, knock on wood, the traffic circles and safety improvements, that we have enough funding to move forward and rebid this. This project began as a neighborhood traffic management plan back in 2015, and working with the area residents identified a number of improvements to help address traffic safety and access along this area. What is proposed is a roundabout at Avenue 64 and Burley Drive, a center median and some bulb outs at Avenue 64 and Chevierdale Drive, and curb extensions at Avenue 64 and Glen Ellen Drive. We have gone out to bid previously. Bids came in way over what we had budgeted and anticipated. Because of the proximity of this project to the 710 corridor, Metro agreed to provide us with an additional $1.8 million in funding so that we can complete this project. So we anticipate being able to go back out to bid by this summer and hopefully beginning construction this January. These are some renderings of what the roundabout will look like. A member of my team was just at the San Rafael Neighborhood Association last night to provide an update on this project, and it was very well received. And a median here, this will help with traffic safety and calming. And that's the last slide I have.
So the question is about the roundabout, its unsightliness, and I guess whether we're committed to that or should the design improve. And I would add to that, Californians aren't good with roundabouts. I went to law school in Boston, and they're used to them. In the UK, I recall years ago, Sid Tyler was the council member from District 7, and some roundabouts were installed, and I think he walked some of those back and removed some. I think there are still at least two that I can think of at Glenarm and Los Robles maybe, and another one further down. Yeah, but in any event, that'll be a process, I think, for folks. So, yeah. David, let me get to the other folks. Yeah. Yes, please.
A roundabout, they'll be new to the city, and they are starting to be more prevalent throughout California. They function the same way as a four-way stop. As you get near to the intersection, you're intended to slow down, and then you have to navigate around the roundabout. So that achieves a couple of things. One is it slows traffic down at that intersection and makes you more aware because you're looking out to make sure no one is coming from the other direction. But it also, in the case that there were a collision, the collisions are less severe. When you have a perpendicular intersection, what ends up happening is if there's a collision, it's either a head-on collision or you have someone hit you from the side. In a roundabout, because of the angle you're going around, chances are that the collision point is going to be of a less severe, which means you'll be safer. Your car might still be impacted, but hopefully you as a person won't be impacted as much. So they are new, and part of what we're talking about is how do we educate Pasadenans about how we use these traffic circles. So I'll acknowledge that they're new, but they're much safer, and again, the impacts when there is one is much less severe, and that's our goal, to minimize severity of impact and collisions.
Could everyone hear that or detect from the tone of voice? Yeah, of course, that's clear. Yeah. There's concerns about the efficacy of this and what the consequences are going to be on Burley and the rest. So.
And we'll monitor, I have already jotted down 2 locations along Burley where this is a concern because it's not in this immediate area. And so we'll certainly take a look at that. But one of the other things that we'll also do is continue to monitor the way this is functioning and make improvements, leading into and out of this area to make sure that the entire corridor is safe. So, but for now, the Avenue 64 project really is focused on these 3 locations.
Okay, I just want to do 1 or 2 more because we've got the bridge still, the Colorado Street Bridge. But yes, you had your hand up patiently.
Thank you. I've noted both of those issues down.
Okay, thank you very much, Laura.
Thank you.
Really appreciate it. Thank you. Okay, and the Colorado Street Bridge is now the bailiwick of Tony Olmos. Tony is our Director of Public Works. He comes to us, 14, 15 months ago? Yep. Tony? Yeah. After, really outstanding careers in the county of Orange and cities in those parts as well, number of postings. So welcome, and we're going to try to finish by 8 if we can. So thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Madison, for inviting me. As a council member said, I am fairly new to the city, being here 16 months, but I do come to you with about 30 years of experience professionally. I'm a civil engineer by education and practice, and I just been having a really great time here in Pasadena. So what I want to do tonight is just tell you a little bit about what the areas of responsibility are for my department. And then I just want to highlight just a few projects, Colorado's Bridge being one of them. And let me see if I got my presentation here. Okay, so my area covers these main bullet points. One of the big parts is street maintenance. That has to do with everything in what they call the public right-of-way. That's basically one side of the street behind the sidewalk to the other side of the street behind the sidewalk. And that includes all the pavement, the sidewalks, our favorite trees. That forestry is under my department. Sewers and storm drains. So during all these storms that we just had, our crews were very busy that whole weekend dealing with all kinds of incidents related to that. Then we also have, it's a long name, resource recovery and recycling, but that's basically refuse and street sweeping. So if anybody wants to talk trash, just come on down. BSFMD, they basically maintain all the buildings, all the city facilities, and all the vehicles and equipment for the entire city. We have over 1,100 pieces of equipment and over 900,000 square feet of building square footage. Engineering division, all those capital projects that my colleague was just talking about, we take it from transportation. We'll actually do the bidding, and then we'll do the award of contract through city council, and then we'll oversee the construction to put them in the ground, if you will. Then we also do all the permitting for any work taking place in the public right-of-way. And lastly, Citizen Service Center 311. This service is pretty awesome. A lot of the agencies that I work for did not have a service like this. This actually takes in calls, not just for public works related things, but just things related to overall city operations. So it's a great, and there's an app that you can get on your phone, app Pasadena CSC, where you can actually submit requests on the fly. So we encourage you to do that. So tonight, I want to briefly give you an update at a very high level for these 4 main areas that would be affecting this area. And I'll just go through them one by one. The first one is organic waste. I know that you've heard about it. It went into effect January 1st of last year. And we were one of the very few cities that actually rolled it out. And we're actually collecting food waste from day one. So we're very proud of that. And there's still a lot of work that needs to take place, as you can tell from this graphic. A big part of organic, the organic going into the landfills is a huge problem. The 6 million tons of just food waste alone goes to the landfill. So that's the purpose of Senate Bill 1383, is to divert that by having residents recycle. So SB 1383 affects the residential sector. And I'll just go through a infographic just so you can kind of see what happens with that. And as a quick update, we hired an outreach consultant that's putting together a very comprehensive plan that you can start seeing more and more information about organic recycling. And then they'll give you more instructions and encouragement and just really provide that education before the state comes in and says, you need to enforce, because they're, per the law, January 1st, 24, we're supposed to start enforcing. But we don't want to come out heavy-handed. We want to do education and provide all the information that you may need just to make sure that everybody jumps on board. So this infographic, just real quick, and I'll try to simplify it very easily. On the upper left-hand corner, this is really where it starts, and you can see this is just talking about food waste. What you would do is you put your food waste in a plastic bag, and then you put it into your can that has the black lid, which is your green waste. Then what happens is our staff collects all the residential food waste, because we collect all the residential with in-house staff. We take it to Shoal Canyon on the upper right-hand corner. They'll separate out the material, they'll separate out the food waste from the green waste. The green waste goes to compost in Oxnard, and the food waste goes to a plant, sanitation district plant in Puente Hills. They'll do this like a slurry mix of all the food waste. That's processed at the Puente Hills plant, and then it's sent over to Carson, where it goes into an anaerobic digester that then turns that into electricity or renewable natural gas. So it basically is repurposing that food waste. Now, we know that there's a lot of residents that would want to do it in a different way. You know, we've been getting a lot of questions about composting. So there's another option. You could either get a compost bin from us at a very nominal cost, and you could do that in your backyard yourself. We're also implementing what we're calling these compost hubs. We're trying to put one in each district. There's already one in McDonald Park. We're working on one at Villa Park. And the one that we have proposed for District 6 is Singer Park. And we say proposed because we're still working with the district liaison, and then there'll be some outreach with that community around that park to see if that's something that they want to do. The way it works, you see a picture of one that we have at a condo complex, and it basically has 3 compartments. And you put the food waste in one, and you fill it with some green material. And once it's there for a certain amount of time, you move that stack or that pile to the next one, and then you kind of just keep going. By the time it gets to the end, you have compost, and the people that are participating from that area can take that compost and use it for their gardens or what have you. So it really is intended to be something run by the community. We obviously will run it first until it gets fully established, and then at that point, hopefully the volunteers will take it over. So that was on the organic waste. Now on the projects, we have updated before. We have a couple of water reuse projects right near the Arroyo. We call it Site 1, Site 2, one San Rafael, the other one San Pascual. And they're located, as you can kind of tell, you have the 110, where you have the pink areas. They're right north of that. So I'll just give you a quick visual of that without going into all the detail. On the left, Site 1, basically what's going to happen is that the water comes in through San Rafael Channel, which takes the overflow from Johnston Lake, and it flows into these infiltration basins. So a lot of this water is going to infiltrate into the ground, and then whatever doesn't infiltrate goes through this treatment, and then it'll get discharged back into San Rafael. There's like a little pipe there, and then it'll go into Arroyo Seco Channel. And this is something that's required of us in terms of cleaning some of these waterways as part of the Regional Water Board requirements on the cities. So that's providing that treatment at Site 1. At Site 2, it's somewhat similar. The only difference there is that some of the water will be collected, and it'll be reused for other purposes. Since there's facilities there, there's a park and a golf course that can use it for irrigation. So those two. So we partner with the city of South Pasadena on on working on these projects. We got grant funds from the state. Senator Portantino's office was instrumental in helping us get $3.5 million for that. And then there's a county. Everybody here, pays into a county tax called Measure W. That's for all these kinds of water reuse or water reclamation projects. And we have $4.7 million from that fund to help fund this. So City of Pasadena is the lead agency on implementing this project. We're working closely with South Pasadena, making it happen. The schedule right now, we're looking to complete final design on these 2 projects by the end of this year. And then next year, we'll award the contract through City Council, get construction started with hopefully having the completion date in '24, weather permitting. Councilmember Madison already talked about Central Library, so I won't belabor the point. But just to highlight, the library was closed back on May 3rd of '21. It's a high priority project, obviously very important to the community. And the next decision point for the city council is that the design team, they're going to come up with these design schemes for how we're going to do a seismic retrofit on the building. The main reason why it was closed is because it's unreinforced masonry. What that means is that you don't have reinforcement that ties the beams, the roof, to the foundation. So with a large earthquake, there's a high likelihood that there'll be some significant damage, if not collapse. So the design schemes are going to identify different levels of improvement. Do you want the photos on the wall not to fall off, which are going to be very, the whole building's going to kind of just shift a little bit? Or do you want it just life safety where people can be safe out of the building, but you're going to sustain damage? So there'll be a cost-benefit analysis that will be done. We'll share that with City Council, and then at that point, they'll make a decision in terms of which one we're going to go with. And then we'll go right into final design to try to get a cost estimate, because we don't have the funds to construct it. So in the spring of next year, we're looking to have that cost estimate. And in the meantime, we're going to be trying to get grants as much as we can. We're going to be very aggressive. And if we don't have enough money at the end, then we're going to have a conversation with City Council about maybe it'll be a bond measure or something else that we would have to figure out in terms of how we're going to fund the rest of it. So the funding to be determined. If the funding is acquired, then we're looking to construct it right around 2025, and it'll take two and a half years to construct. Colorado Bridge, I don't have a comprehensive presentation since we just had a community meeting just last month that gave a very comprehensive update in terms of where we're at. But just as a very quick summary, back in 2017, that's when all the issues came really to the council level in terms of all the suicides that were happening on the bridge at an alarming rate. So at that time, there was a temporary fence that was installed, and then there was direction given to a task force to identify what would be the best way to mitigate, these types of emergencies. And the decision that was made at the city council level with a lot of input from a whole lot of stakeholders is that a vertical barrier would be the way to go for mitigating that. So staff went to work in getting a design consultant and trying to come up with these different options for a vertical barrier, and went through a whole process with the commissions and the public. We went to public safety in August of 21st. And right before that public safety meeting, maybe a month or two before, some mock-ups, full-scale mock-ups were put up on the bridge. And I think when people started seeing the size of these things and some of the design come to life, there were a lot of comments, and there was no consensus among the council in terms of which design we're going to go with. There was really a lot of desire for the concepts to incorporate more of the architecture of the bridge and a lot of other factors. So we went back to the drawing board and started working with stakeholders, including Pasadena Heritage. They put us in contact with the Institute of Classical Architecture, Art, ICAA for short. We've had several workshops with them. And in the meantime, we're trying to hire another design consultant. We went out to RFP, didn't get any proposals. So now we went again, and now we did get proposals. So now we're in that process now. So we give an update to public safety back in September. And really, our main thing is get this consultant on board, get these design concepts going again, have more community meetings, like the one that we just had last month, where we make sure that the community's going to be involved every step of the way in helping us with these revised designs. It may include some elements from before a little bit. It may include new elements, but still about vertical barriers just to make sure that we're going to address it that way. And I put this link down here, and I can make this available. We recorded the community meeting from last month in full length, and it's available there. You can see all the discussion. You can see our full presentation. I'll still be here. If you want to take my card, I can get that information to you so that you'll have the information as well. And I think that's just my updates for tonight. And if there's... So the first question was about any changes to recycling. The second one was about the bags and what happens to the bags when you put your food waste and you go and we take them to recycling. So on your first question, I don't have all the numbers with me in terms of what's there. I know that the law hasn't changed. But sometimes we send the reminders when our staff starts noticing that there's a lot of different kinds of things in the recycling bins. Since when we take them over, when we take it to recycling center, they'll start letting us know that there's a lot of things that they have to throw away because they're not compliant. But I can give you my information. I can give you the exact numbers of what those recycled numbers are. So what had happened was China used to have these standards in terms of how clean the material needs to be that they would buy. They lowered that standard or they raised the standard so that it's very hard to get it to be that level, to be that clean. That may be the reason why they cut down on the amount of recycling material that you can send, because they can't sell it. So I can get you the exact number, but I think that does sound right to me. 1 and 2, yes, that does absolutely sound right. The second part, when the bags go to the sanitation district in Puente Hills, they actually do remove the bags there, and they only process the food waste into the slurry. So then the bags are thrown away at that point. So the question is if we should use biodegradable bags as part of the food waste recycling. The answer is no, because those bags are more than likely just going to be disposed, and it's just whatever you have available. It could be a bag that you use for bread. It can be a bag or whatever you have. Just put it in there. Put it in, as long as it doesn't tear easily. Put it in the black bin, and then that'll get processed. So the question is are we collecting the food waste from public schools? The answer is no, because I know the state, they're under their different jurisdiction, so they take care of their own recycling for the schools. So the question is, what about the food waste at the restaurant? So one thing I didn't mention is that there was Assembly Bill 1826 that came out around 2016, 2017, that required food waste recycling for commercial. So our 20 haulers that we have, they're non-exclusive franchise haulers for the city that collect everything on industrial commercial. They have their own programs that they work with these businesses to collect their food waste and recycle.
Thanks so much. Thanks to all of our speakers as well.